Hello, welcome to WHUT's groundbreaking series, Vocal Point. I'm Tony Richards. Money. When we have it, life's burdens can be considerably less devastating. But when struggling with having enough to provide shelter, food, utilities, any of the basics, making and keeping it can be a real battle. A recent study revealed that more than 2/3 of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. It's a harsh reality that many of us must face. Today, we will discuss your all-over financial makeover. We'll look at ways to stay solvent and financially relevant, even get ahead in these times. But first, some context. 50 years ago, President Lyndon Johnson used his first State of the Union speech to declare war on poverty and unemployment in America.
Members of the Senate, my fellow Americans.
The social program aptly named the War on Poverty was a determined domestic policy. But according to the U.S. Census Bureau in 2012, 13.7% of people 18 to 64 still lived in poverty. That's 26.5 million people, and almost 22% of children live beneath the poverty line. The Pew Center reports that more than half of the 22 million person increase in official poverty between 1972 and 2012 was among Hispanics. And African Americans' unemployment rates are still more than double the rate among whites. There is also a disproportionate loss of home ownership among people of color. In general, minorities haven't been able to get back into the housing market because banks have made it tougher and costlier for those they deem risky borrowers to get mortgages. Some grim statistics to be sure. All of these variables make it seem impossible to plan for the future, but there are solutions. We're covering a lot of ground today, so joining us to help us on our journey toward financial freedom are Dr. Robert Brown III, a medical sociologist and Howard University professor whose research looks at the relationship between money and health. He wrote the book Economic Stress: Harsh Truths and Keys to Empowerment. He stresses self-marketing and financial preparation in the event of financial pitfalls. Also joining us is Joseph Lightman Santa Cruz, Director of Community Outreach with Capital Area Asset Builders, an organization that educates about wealth creation and pathways towards success for low to moderate income clients. And Karen Gibbs, President and founder of the Gibbs Perspective, a company dedicated to financial literacy and investor education. During the next hour, we will address the matter of financial literacy, from underemployment to unemployment, to personal saving to home ownership, to entrepreneurship to properly handling debt. We will address some of the big picture pitfalls in personal finance and hopefully empower you with information to help you get and stay financially healthy. Sadly, we should probably start with some of the problems many people have. So let's talk about some of the challenges in our community. Let's start by talking about money stress. And I know, Dr. Brown, your book that you wrote covers a lot of different topics. Can you share some of those with us?
Sure. Well, one of the things that is affecting so many people now is what I call economic stress, which is the inability of a person or family to meet their financial obligations because of job loss, not enough work, job instability, or low wages, and the impact this can have on their mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, and economic well-being. And so when you think about the extent to which people are unable to take care of their financial well-being, it doesn't just apply to people who may be out of work. It can also apply to people who are gainfully employed, because we now live in more at-will work environments where the employer could come to you and say your position is no longer available. And so what is happening now is you have more and more people around the country who are focused on the economic instability that they may face.
And Karen, I know earlier we talked about stress. How does stress play into all of this?
Oh, stress especially economic stress, is one of the biggest problems in marriage. I mean, people argue about money. It also keeps you from sleeping, so that definitely means that you're not going to be as healthy as you should be. And it's just hard to make it every day, that burden. You feel shame, you feel guilt, and you're just beaten down.
And of course, I know your organization being out there in the community. Can you share some of the things that your organization helps to provide?
Thanks, Tony. First of all, great to be here with you and the panelists, and also thank you to WHUT for hosting this very important topic. Socioeconomic challenges is something that is extremely important to capital area asset builders. We are a nonprofit organization based in the District of Columbia. We do work throughout the region in the greater DC area. We focused on empowering people financially so that they can be saving, they can be better educated when it comes to financial matters, and most importantly, start the process to create wealth, to empower themselves for a better future, or a better future for their families.
And Dr. Brown, I want to get back to you on the topic that you talked about with unemployment versus underemployment. Expound on that for us.
Well, obviously, when you're unemployed, you're without work, but you can be gainfully employed but be underemployed, which means that you may have a skill set that you are not completely utilizing. So say, for example, you have a person who has a college degree but can only find work in a local bodega or perhaps a Walmart. There's nothing wrong with working at Walmart, but you want to be able to maximize the skill sets that you have worked to earn. But more and more of the time now, because of the job scarcity, there are more and more people who are highly credentialed who may not be able to find the work that is commensurate with their level of skills and education.
Sure.
And so this also contributes to economic stress.
And Karen, I know you're probably ready to jump in there. Go right ahead.
I'm just thinking about all the money that corporate America has that they're not spending on employing people or even on the job training. When I was coming up, that was one of the ways you could make it up the ladder. Right now, you're not having that. We're in a barbell society where you're either on the lower end of the scale or you're at the high end of the scale, and the center has been eviscerated, really.
Yeah. I'm going to open this up to anybody on the panel. Liquid poverty line. What exactly is that?
Liquid asset poverty is something that the Corporation for Economic Development, CFED, here in DC utilizes. It's a great way to analyze what is the improvement from year over year when it comes to low income and moderate income households and our American society in general terms. In essence, anybody who's considered liquid poor is a household that is unable to save beyond 3 months. On average, a household of 4 individuals may have less than $6,000. What that means is that if there is a catastrophe, whether an economic one, a healthcare one, or any other situation, that American household would not be able to easily come across in a positive way after those 3 months. So if we are reaching 44% of our entire society unable to face a major catastrophe, we're facing a serious situation throughout the nation.
Let me ask you this. As the face of the working poor, has that changed over the years?
I think it has, because the working poor could be a family that was formerly quite well heeled. But now you talk about the levels of job disruption and job scarcity and outsourcing. And so you may have a family that is highly educated, may have been middle to upper middle income, but now because of the job scarcity and the at-will work environments I mentioned at the top of the show, you may find highly educated people who are experiencing job instability more of the time. And so when you think of working poor, you're primarily thinking about people who are living paycheck to paycheck.
Wow.
But job instability can facilitate paycheck to paycheck lifestyles among those who are at least economically more well-heeled, and perhaps even create the economic stress that may help or facilitate descension into sometimes depression. And so we know that part of the challenge now is to do more insourcing of jobs that pay living wages. And so we hope that through this show and other types of programs, we can begin to see more of that type of an effort around the country.
And you mentioned living paycheck to paycheck. For folks that may be in a situation like that, how do they still have the American dream living like that?
Well, I think that you may have to adjust what the American dream looks like. You may have to ask yourself, is it fancy homes, is it big cars, is it lavish vacations, or is it being able to have your family intact? Is it about being able to live a more modest lifestyle, but increase your quality of living? I think that's a question that many families around the country are having to ask themselves and answer the question.
Karen, what do you say?
I'm saying that the 2008 financial crisis really eroded much of that safety net that many people had. I know people that were working, then they lost their job, and they had to eat through their savings. They had to even tap their 401k, their retirement money. And now, even though the stock market has come back, the working conditions have not come back. The jobs are not there, the salaries are not there, and again, you are really behind the 8 ball. How do you save the money? How do you pay the bills?
Sure.
It's very, very difficult. You certainly have a difficult time doing it on minimum wage.
And then how are people able to pay their student debts if they have a student debt, you know, living paycheck to paycheck?
On top of which interest rates on the student debt has doubled. There were some parents that mortgaged their home for student debt, their tuition, the student's tuition, their child's tuition, and now the home is underwater, they may have lost it, and student debt is not discharged in bankruptcy. You owe that no matter what.
So then how do they pay the education, pay the mortgage, or pay the rent, food, clothes for the kids? How is all this done? Living paycheck to paycheck.
Some people don't pay those bills, and that messes up their credit, which means then some places actually, for a process of employment, check your credit record. And so you've got all of these marks against you. You're in the hole and you can't get out. Nobody's even throwing you a ladder. It's very, very difficult.
Joseph, let me get you in here as well, because I know you deal with low to moderate income families. How do you deal with that?
Just as a segment to what Karen was mentioning, the ladder. There are great programs throughout the U.S. that actually do provide the ability for low-income and moderate-income families to make it on their own with the assistance of somebody else. At Capital Area Asset Builders, we try as hard as possible never to use the word help. We strongly dislike the word help. We enable people, we assist people, we facilitate information. But one program that has been very successful since the mid-1990s, focusing specifically on the low-income and moderate-income households in the U.S., called the Assets for Independence, AFI. At CAB, we're the oldest organization in the country providing individual development accounts. IDAs were set up in the mid-1990s so that low-income people could be saving for the purpose of 3 assets, one of 3 assets: post-secondary education, home ownership, launching or relaunching a small business. This is a way for people to have access to a tool, but they are the ones who are being empowered. They're being promoted to save. They're being given the tools to better financially assess and manage their life, but it's always up to the individuals. And that is what is so amazing about the American dream. I am an immigrant. I'm a first-generation immigrant from Central America, and it is up to one to truly determine how much can be accomplished. That doesn't mean that we all have access to the same tools and to the same knowledge and the same capabilities, but at the end of the day, the American dream is still very much vibrant, still very much alive, and it's up to us to determine how much we want to accomplish of it.
And seeing that again, you deal with the community and so many families. What is the success rate of your organization?
Absolutely, it's a very challenging situation. We're talking about liquid asset poverty. We're talking about low-income families, but we're also talking about middle class. Dr. Brown talked about the middle class. In the U.S. right now, you have more than 25% of the middle class liquid poor. So it's not only a situation impacting low income, it's also the traditional robust establishment in the American society. If that foundation is nearly crumbling, or at any point could crumble, then everybody, regardless of level of income or level of wealth, would be impacted. 2007, 2008 was really a wake-up call. Several policies were implemented and enacted that prevented this major situation from becoming an unbearable catastrophe. However, there are still many things at the policy level, whether it's state, federal, local, that still need to be modified.
And Dr. Brown, your book, do you cover some of these topics as well in your book?
Yes, one of the issues is many people who have been affected by the mortgage crisis of '07 find themselves in situations where they may have had to refinance or get loan modifications. Well, part of the problem with that has been, as these loan modifications are completed, which could take several years, in some instances, those new loans are being sold to new loan services, which sometimes reinstitute things like notice of intent to foreclose. So what it does is it puts that homeowner right back in the same situation from which they were trying to extricate. And so the problem now is we need to look at this from a policy level. And the other issue is we find that disproportionately these types of circumstances affect people of color more than other groups. And so we really need to look at the extent to which we're trying to facilitate the American dream based on the policies that we have on the books.
So how do we do that? How do people of color get those loans that you were speaking of?
Well, I think one of the first things you have to do if you happen to find yourself in a situation where you're having some challenges is you've got to engage your state representative. Because what you need is to have some reinforcement behind you to say to the mortgage companies that I'm not just standing alone, I'm standing with the backing of my state representative, or you may in fact want to pursue getting information from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is sort of a watchdog agency, which is a federal agency that helps homeowners ensure that they are not being taken advantage of in terms of some of the predatory activities that we've seen over the last several years. But the one thing is to understand and know where the information is, and I think this is what is one of the deficits sometimes in many communities. People feel that they can only do this by themselves, and we're all here to say that there is help out there for you.
Sure.
In addition to state representatives, absolutely at the local municipal level, but there are also a lot of community-based organizations that do this type of work. What makes the most sense is to disseminate information so that we're all fully aware of where assistance can be received. Throughout the DC area, there are multiple community-based organizations that provide assistance when it comes to home ownership or small business entrepreneurship or people having situations or troubles with their family budgets. CAB is one of them, and all of this can definitely take place only with the financial support of some key players, foundations, wealthy individuals, banking entities, city community development, city foundation. It really needs, it's a societal issue that needs for all stakeholders to come together.
And Karen, I know you probably talk about a lot of this with your the Gibbs perspective.
Yes, I do, because I really believe that the knowledge is the key. If you know where to go for information, you have a step up. But also we have to be very honest with ourselves. We talk about budgeting, that's kind of forward thinking, but we need to know where our cash is going, or do we have the cash to go somewhere? So it really means that you have to sit down, be honest with yourself, go over where is the money going? The slippage, is it through bottled water? Is it through coffee? How are you spending your money, and where can you make those changes that will help you move toward financial freedom? That's what you want.
Is that a part of being financial literate?
Yes, it is, very much so. It's not just knowing a stock and a bond. It's knowing how much am I spending, how much am I bringing in, where can I make some changes, or do I really have to have another income stream? One of the things that we realized after 2008 is that you do need to have multiple income streams. You cannot just depend on a salary.
Sure.
You always have to have a plan B, and in some cases a C, D, and E.
But what happens in the event that you don't have, you know, multiple incomes coming in the house? You know, you're single or you're divorced. What happens then?
Then you have to take a knife to that spending. You have to rein it in so that you can pay off the debt that's holding you back. Having a lot of debt is meaning that you're working to pay off that debt. It's indentured servitude. You cannot get ahead. Debt is an albatross around your neck.
Tony, what's so amazing is that what Karen's indicating is definitely step one of a path towards success.
Yes.
And the first step that we all, regardless of income or wealth, need to be answering is, do I want this or do I need this? It's a very basic set of questions, but just by being able and being honest with ourselves, which sometimes is more difficult than being honest with others, being honest with ourselves to answer the basic question, do I need to buy a very expensive cell phone or do I want to buy it? One of the aspects we focus at CAB in our financial education classes is having people be the one to answer those questions. We are nobody to judge or tell others what to do, but our participants are the ones who eventually come to their realization, not all of them unfortunately, but most of them, who say, you know what, you've assisted me to identify ways on how I thought I did not have the money to start putting money aside for retirement, for my kids' 529 account. And it's by simply saying, how much am I anticipating to spend versus how how much am I actually spending?
Yeah.
And that delta, that difference, always is the best way to say, this is the lifestyle that I'm living. Only when we sit down as a family, as a household, and write down a family budget, it is that we truly know who we are as an entity. And at that point, there are multiple ways to really start paying down debt, setting money aside for savings or for investing.
And that's very important. How do you tell families that when social media plays such a major impact in our lives, and then you have television steady putting out the wants versus the needs? How do you deal with that with families to tell them what's important?
Entity like mine at CAB, we cannot compete with the multi-billion-dollar marketing programs and budgets at corporations. They're in the business of selling a service or a product.
Yeah.
One key aspect where we do empower our participants is to be able to determine what is a necessity, what needs to be translated into a goal or an objective. So as an example, my wife and I have the pleasure of having a 2.5-year-old princess. Wow. Having her be fully educated down the road, providing for her well-being down the road is a crucial objective for myself, for my family. So we're working towards that objective. After we look at budgets, we move on to say, we all have dreams and aspirations, but how do you translate them into objectives and actionable goals? That is really this type of sincere conversation that we all need to have. But coming back to your question, we cannot compete with any kind of a marketing or advertising budget.
Yes.
Where we can allow people to make better decisions is to simply say, what is it relevant? What is important for me and for my family? As an example, teething or giving out money for my mosque, for my temple, for my synagogue might be one of the crucial elements in my life. If that is the case, then let's ensure that we're setting aside a percentage in our budget to make it happen.
Gotcha. Okay, let's talk about a topic that many people deal with but really don't want to face is credit. How really important is credit these days?
I think credit is very important. It's the engine that drives this economy. You have to have some sort of credit. You have to have a credit history for companies to be able to say that, okay, you're worthwhile to invest in. But a lot of people live off of credit. And that is the biggest mistake. You really dig yourself in a hole there. And so you have to establish good credit and bad credit. Having a mortgage is good. Having a student loan is good because it has helped you, again, with the education, move up that ladder.
It's good debt versus bad debt.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Good
yeah.
debt versus bad debt.
So if you're in a situation where you have that bad debt or that bad credit because, you know, your family didn't teach you about credit growing up, how do you begin to repair that?
You start paying off the debt. That's the first thing you do. And you can either go with the lowest balance so that you see progress quickly, or you pay off the highest interest rate card, but you have to address it and start paying off. If you have too many cards, stop using them. That's the first thing.
Sure.
Using cash, it's very much harder to pay, get rid of cash. Give up that $20 or so. It's very easy to just throw it on plastic, and then you're amazed when you see the bill later on. But actually having to part with cash is probably one of the first steps. I'd cut up the cards and use cash.
And Dr. Brown, don't you have to be proactive? I'm sorry.
You do have to be proactive, and to Karen's point, one of the things you want to keep in mind is not to create new debt. So a good way to do that is when you go into a store, maybe it's a grocery store or whatever the store is, when you leave the store with that item, you should own the item. Or if you don't own the item because you paid cash, you should be able to pay off that item in 30 days. And that way you're not creating new debt. And I think that begins to build a new habit. And you become more acclimated to using cash as opposed to the credit card. But I think it's so convenient, and stores and businesses make it so convenient for people. Oh, we'll just take the credit card. And in some instances, people will even look at you behind the cash register in a funny way when you pull out cash. It's like, well, what are you doing? And so this is all about facilitating greater financial literacy. But the other piece about that is you have to have a willingness to change your mind about what financial literacy and good financial literacy is.
Getting into a habit.
Okay, go ahead.
On credit, it's very easy to talk about the negative aspects of credit, and we have lots of data and lots of research to primarily for Latino and African American communities, how that is deeply impacting their well-being. But let's not forget that credit is an asset in the U.S. The United States is one of the few countries throughout the whole world where having access to credit enables one to put down a down payment, to set up a business, to launch post-secondary education. That is not accessible and that is not reachable in the majority of the countries throughout the world. So having access to credit is a significant asset for anybody in this country. Focusing on something Dr. Brown just mentioned, it is a matter of taking the proactive nature or the proactive stance of having access to information and being able to determine what needs to take place. There is no need for anybody to have a significant number of credit cards in their wallet or purse. We need to be, first of all, aware of what is the impact on our credit score of owning more credit cards. Secondly, and this applies to all of us, we need to be aware of what are the rates being charged by the credit cards that we hold. Including myself, I don't think I fully understand all the expenses associated with credit cards. And I kind of consider myself a semi-intelligent person. So it's really an issue of paying attention to all the details.
I want to talk about entrepreneurs. Is it still good for entrepreneurs in 2014?
Absolutely. I mean, you're seeing spikes in the level of entrepreneurship principally because of job scarcity. And so you have a lot of people who are discovering themselves. For those who may have had this idea in their heads that they put on the back burner because of the need to conform to a 9-to-5 job, and there's nothing wrong with a 9-to-5 job, but to Karen's point, you need multiple funding streams. And so there are people right now who have decided that, you know what, I've had this idea in my head all these years, I'm going to sketch it out on a piece of paper to see what it looks like, I'm going to see if there's a niche in the marketplace, and then I'm going to find a way to monetize it. That's entrepreneurship, and a great definition of entrepreneurship is living a few years of your life like most people won't, so that you can spend the rest of your life like most people can't.
What are the smart, I'm sorry, go
That's okay. I was going to say, that's the entree into the Millionaires Club. Millionaires aren't made by necessarily the stock market. Most of the millionaires own their own business, they're married, they're college educated, and they work 7 days a week on the idea that they believe.
Give me one, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Small business and micro enterprises continues to be the crux of the American economy. Most of the GDP in this country is produced by products and services sold by small businesses. It is also a great data point for communities of color, Latinos, African Americans. Most of the micro enterprises throughout the country are owned by Latinos or African Americans. That's a great data point into a segue towards a better life for everybody.
One quick way for entrepreneurs to start. Give me one point.
Well, a great strategy is to go on the Bureau of Labor Statistics website to find the listing of all of the job industries that are going to be in the highest demand over the next 10 years. And so if you look at that listing, that will give you a framework for what's coming down the road. And so if you happen to have a skill set or an affinity in one of those industries, that could be the jumping off point to start your own business.
Okay. And I got to take a break. Welcome back. Joining us now to discuss more solutions and resources, Jeremy Cullimore, Director of Communications of the Washington Area Community Investment Fund, a nonprofit development loan fund which provides access to capital and technical assistance for micro, small business, and entrepreneurs. And also Karen Morrell, founder and president of Higher Heights Consulting and Training. Karen has hands-on experience in the housing and financial services industry. Welcome to both of you. Let's talk about support systems. Talk a little about community investment for us.
All right. The Washington Area Community Investment Fund, it's a 26-year-old nonprofit organization based here in the district. We work regionally in the capital region, and we provide access to capital and specialized technical assistance to small business owners in the area. And
what sort of track record do you have for the folks that you provide services for?
Well, first and foremost, we started as an investment organization. We're very proud of our 100% investor repayment, and those investments that come into us go out to small business owners in the area. And we take on those that aren't able to go to a traditional lender, and our performance rate is about 96% for our portfolio. So we're very proud of that. And it's really attributed to the fact that we partner the access to capital that we have with that special technical assistance too. So we're not just handing these small business owners a bag of money and saying good luck. We're providing them with free business counseling for the life of the loan and even after.
Yeah. And Karen, I know you work with a lot of folks as well that offer support to individuals across the country. Talk about their involvement in the housing market.
Yeah, I work with a lot of nonprofits and private foundations that develop programs to help low-income people. And so when it comes to housing, a lot of the programs that I've been working on recently are really about preserving their housing. You know, that a lot of people have been in the situation where they're about to lose their home. So I've worked with a lot of national nonprofits to make sure that there's places that people can go for help. One of the biggest challenges with when people are about to lose their home is that sometimes they don't reach out for help soon enough. And so we've really worked to get the word out. There are places, you know, there are toll-free numbers you can call, there are organizations that you can work with, but the key is, you know, as soon as you get that delinquent notice, call, because if you wait too late, it's hard to intervene. But there's a lot of programs doing good work out there to help people.
What about the financial services industry?
On the financial services side, one of the things we've been doing in that area is really looking at financial products and trying to figure out products that are really appropriate for the low-income community. When you look at things like overdraft fees and some of the fees that are charged just to maintain a bank account, it doesn't make sense for a low-income person to have that product because they can't afford it. They're going to get hit with monthly fees that they can't afford to pay for. They're going to get hit with overdraft fees if they can't afford to keep the appropriate minimum balance in the account. So I've been working with some nonprofit organizations, and there are some for-profits that are doing some pilots as well, but really looking at what are the types of products, financial products, that would really be beneficial to a low-income person that would help get them into the financial mainstream, but in a way that's not going to harm their financial situation. Yeah,
and again, that goes back to us talking about how banks are in business for themselves and to make money. And
that's right.
Yeah.
And Karen brings up a wonderful point about the not-profit part of it. You know, banks are one thing, but you should also not ignore credit unions because they are not-for-profit. They offer the same products that banks do. They are guaranteed. The deposits are guaranteed, although they're not called deposit, they're called shares because when you put your money in, you become a member of a credit union. And credit unions do not have that conflict of interest of whether they're going to serve their customer base or whether they're going to serve their shareholders.
Tony, we were talking about financial products and low-income families. In the District of Columbia, more people own cell phones than have a relationship with a financial institution. This means that a significant portion of our District of Columbia society has never had a relationship with a savings account, a checking account, a debit card, a credit card. On the credit card situation, within DC, we have the highest average credit card debt of approximately $14,000. If we're not the highest, we're the second highest, which is not a good number to have. But access to financial products tends to be a mental and a physical barrier by a good number of low-income families. So one of the key areas where CAB works on is to partner with entities like the District of Columbia government, Bank on DC, America Saves. Those are entities that promote good savings behavior. And one of the key aspects that all four of us keep talking about is disseminating information, making sure that people have access to information so that they can be taking the right steps to achieve a better life.
Yeah. Karen, is this where business counseling and support systems can help?
Oh, certainly. Once you know what products are available, then you can compare them. You really need to know the cost. You have a lot of things, like, say, some of these secured credit cards, or some businesses were actually paying people in debit cards instead of checks. But that means then to check your balance, you have a fee. To initiate or authorize something, you have a fee. The fees add up and start taking away. So the more information that you have, the better choices you can make, and that's what we're trying to do, have better choices.
And Dr. Brown, please jump in here.
Well, when you talk about things like financial literacy, one of the behaviors that we talk about needing to modify is this idea of when I get paid, I spend all of my money, I'm broke until I get paid again. And so that type of a mindset continues to create situations that the person cannot control financially, quite frankly. So a part of the financial literacy is we've got to change how we think about money and what it really needs to be used for and how it needs to be put to the groceries, to the rent, to the children's needs, and then also to savings, even if it's just a little bit. And I have this experiment that I give to people And that is to try to save, if you can, 25 cents a week or 50 cents a week or $1 a week. If you can save more, try this. Save the amount of money that corresponds to the week of the year. So say, for example, we're in week 10 or 11, you'd save $11. In week 15, you'd save 15. In week 45, you save 45. If you could save the amount of money that corresponds to the week of the year for the entire year, at the end of the year, you will have saved $1,378. And so again, we're talking about changing behaviors.
Yeah. But when folks are living paycheck to paycheck, does that? You know,
well, obviously, that may not be realistic for a family that's living paycheck to paycheck, but the idea is to try to save something and get into the habit of, no matter how small the amount is, that you're not going to touch it.
And I'd like to add to Dr. Brown's comments. We've used the term financial literacy, but I'd like to share another term that is often used in the industry, and that's financial capability. And it really builds on this idea that you're talking about, that knowledge isn't enough. Simply knowing the steps to take to save isn't enough, but it's important to really get people to take action. Like, you know, with my health, I know I should eat fruits and vegetables every day. I know I should exercise every day. That doesn't mean I do it. So financial capability is about really translating that knowledge into action. So, you know, having something as simple as a framework where people can start to save a certain amount every week, that starts to translate that knowledge about saving. I know savings is important, but that translates it into action, and that's really what we want to see happen.
Yeah. And lowering the threshold too, because a lot of people think, well, I have to start with a lot of money to open an account. President Obama suggested or proposed MyRA, which is something that you can start with $25 and add as little as $5 a week. It's after tax. This money is invested in not the stock market, but safe government securities. And once you get $15,000, you can then roll it over into an IRA. But it's a wonderful idea and a proposal that I would hope would gain some traction.
And Tony, we're talking about saving, and let's not forget that April 15th, the deadline for filing taxes is coming up soon. So let's all remember that. Within the District of Columbia, there's a very powerful anti-poverty tool called the Earned Income Tax Credit. It's been perceived by Republicans and Democrats as the best anti-poverty tool in the country for more than 3 decades. District of Columbia residents have access to the most robust EITC in the whole country. It's refundable. It is money that gets put to work in our local communities, but we need to take the right steps to actually claim this type of credit and other tax credits. Because of tax season being right now, great opportunity primarily for low and moderate income families to start the process of saving. So one of the concepts that CAB keeps pushing out is, let's ensure that not only you claim a tax credit such as the EITC, but that you're making something out of that. Make money work for your money. So a good percentage or a good portion of that tax credit can be put to work in a savings account, be able to get even more tax credits. If I'm able to receive the Earned Income Tax Credit, and if I put a portion of that money aside and save it and invest it in my kid's 529 account, in the District of Columbia, in Virginia and Maryland, at the state income tax level, I will get another tax credit for the next year. So right here, you keep increasing and empowering yourself by doing what needs to be done.
And Dr. Brown, I know that you concentrate on sponsors in the marketplace. Explain that for us.
Well, when I talk about sponsors, I'm really talking about the people, and this is really related to getting access to work. I'm talking about the extent to which, in this day and age, when you apply for a job, typically it's via the internet. You're applying for that position with your resume and application. When you hit the send button, you just become a virtual piece of paper. But the sponsor is the person who helps to get you in the room. And so that person is the advocate once that transmission has been received. And one of the challenges now is that many more people are becoming so much more frustrated because they're sending out tons of resumes, but they're never getting any feedback. And that's because they are virtual pieces of paper in the marketplace. And so we talked about social media in the previous segment. One of the ways that you can help create the demand for yourself is to create profiles on social media like LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, especially LinkedIn, because more and more job recruiters are using LinkedIn to identify potential job applicants.
Let's get to the nuts and bolts of this. Jeremy, let's talk about wealth creation. Where do we start?
Well, with small businesses, wealth creation starts with themselves. And we've talked a lot about individual budgeting and family budgeting. And it starts there even for small business owners, and that's why we have workshops with CAB and Joseph here talking about small business money management and starting for small business owners, taking care of your own financials. And once we transfer your own financial stability into your small business, it kind of comes back to the same basics of budgeting and what are your priorities. And we talked about creating your own job. People who have been unemployed for a long period of time and decided to create their own wealth. And that comes by creating a job. They are also creating community wealth by starting their business and creating other jobs. And so that actually, it spreads out in that way, in that spiderweb way, through communities, whether it's a community facility starting up, which WAKEF helps as well, or affordable housing. But building wealth comes on many different points, which small business is definitely, we've talked about that, a major one in somebody creating their own job, and then many others. So, I mean, aside from individual wealth, it's about creating that community wealth as well. There's pillars to a community. There's successful small businesses, there's affordable housing, there's a continuum of housing, there is community centers, there are child care centers as well. And so to have those 4 pillars, that's really a community wealth that is sustainable.
Yeah. Well, now it's time to hear from you, our studio audience. So step to the microphone and please give us your name and then state your question or your comment.
Good evening. My name is Sande Costley. I am going to be a graduating senior in May at Howard University. Upon graduation, I'll be moving and relocating to start my new full-time job. So my question to you all is, what type of budgeting tips or tools would you recommend for cultivating better spending habits? It'll be my first time maybe owning a house, paying a bill, and so how can I kind of prepare for that in terms of saving, budgeting, also spending, and really leading a quality life without pinching pennies?
Yeah. Who'd like to jump in on that?
Sure, I'll take a shot. First of all, congratulations on achieving this milestone in your life. That's awesome. We all learn based on previous failures or best practices or success stories. One of the aspects that we focus in financial planning, or specifically at Capital Area Asset Builders, is to enable you to have access to different tools. You specifically talk about budgeting. That's awesome that you're already talking about this. One of the key elements you want to take is to start creating a budget. Be able to determine how much you believe you will be spending on a monthly basis versus tracking how much you have spent. Then you're really able to determine how much money you're correctly using or incorrectly using. As a specific example, it's great to be able to break down housing, food, entertainment, eating out, transportation, cell phone, and so forth. So let's not aggregate everything, but be able to segregate as much as possible so you can identify the pockets of money where you can better utilize your assets.
Karen, give her a couple tips, please.
Yeah, the one thing I wanted to say, because it seems so foreign when you're young and just out of college, is to start saving for retirement. I mean, I know it seems like retirement is so far off, but believe me, it'll come sooner than you think. And if you start saving at a young age, it's so your money has time to grow. So you'll be in a much better position the earlier you start saving. So particularly if your employer matches funds, you can't beat that. So.
And one other thing, there are all sorts of apps now, free apps that will help you go through the budgeting process. One that I like is by the Treasury Department, Your Taxpayer Dollars at Work, mymoney.gov, and it will give you a wealth of information and some direction in terms of plotting your numbers into your personal budget, because one size does not fit all.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't say congratulations for what's about to happen in May, but also the fact that you have a job to go through, because I can't tell you how many young people will graduate from college, and I ask the question, so what are your plans now? And they will say, well, I guess I need to start looking for work. That is one of the most distressing things as a college professor for me to hear. So congratulations to you.
Yeah. Congratulations. Great question, too.
Thank you.
Wow. So proud of her. Already started on the right track.
Hi, my name is Livia Doman. I'm a teacher in Virginia, but I have a condo in Washington, D.C. My mortgage is actually underwater, and I actually live in an area of Southeast that's really undervalued in general. I'm very much interested at some point in renting my place out, but I'm afraid of becoming liquid poor, as I just learned today. And I wonder if you can tell me the best case scenario for me ultimately renting my place.
can I ask you first, have you done anything with the HARP program or the HAMP program in modifying that mortgage, getting some relief from the government? There are programs there that are designed for those that are underwater.
Well, unfortunately, as I understand it, there has to be, I believe, a 20%, 80% ratio. And because my neighborhood is so depressed, I don't qualify for HARP, actually. And I've tried many, many times over the years. And I'm very sad that the interest rates are actually going up, and I still find myself in this position. If I were, I've seen my neighbors actually get refinanced, but that's largely because they've been behind on their mortgage. Because I've never been late, I haven't benefited from any of those programs.
We need to find a community organization that would help you, because there are situations that many people are in your same situation and are not just lost out of the pocket. They want to help this community. They want to help your neighborhood. And you might even want to think of selling it. You might want to do a short sale. I know it's really hard when you want to hold on to that property, but sometimes that might not be the best plan. So you want to talk to somebody and see all your options.
I would highly recommend, there's a community-based organization in DC called the Latino Economic Development Center, LADC. Give them a call, because they are in the business of assisting homeowners such as yourself.
And the other piece I'd add to that, I'm sure this agency is, but you want to make sure that the agency is a HUD certified counseling agency. Really important.
Wow, thank you so much for your question. She brings up a very interesting point, that liquid poor. What really is that for those in our audience that may not really understand that title?
Focusing on one of the standard definitions is having the ability to not only survive, but be able to bear a significant impact on your family finances. So previously in the show, we were talking about a family household having at least 3 months worth of savings in order to pay down something. We know that life happens. The car will break down. God knows that here in the district, whether it's summer storms or winter storms, branches and trees fly everywhere. If you're a homeowner, you need to be anticipating this life happens situation. And if we are not anticipating, coming back to savings, to budget, to access to financial products, we need to be anticipating some things that otherwise we hope will not happen, but very likely will take place. So directly answering your question, for those families in the greater DC area or throughout the nation that are unable to save more than 3 months of their total expenses, that would be the answer to the definition. Yeah.
And Karen, I'm sure you find a lot of people in that same situation where they're trying to hold on to their property. Are there any other basic approaches for them?
Well, you know, the thing that came to mind is, as Joseph was talking, is an approach actually that CAB uses, and it's really a holistic approach that many nonprofits are doing now. In this environment, we know that even having a job isn't enough sometimes these days to make it. And so a lot of organizations are using an approach where what they call integrated services. So when you come to that organization, they're not just helping you with your house or with your finances. They're helping with your employment. They're helping connect you to benefits if possible. So you're getting a whole suite of services, and that's really what people need to make ends meet today.
Jeremy, you have any tips on that?
I would say that it just in DC, in the DC region, it's a very tight-knit group when it comes to nonprofit, government, public-private partnerships, that there's a lot of resources to bear for people in need that are trying to create a job, find a job, save their home. And I think there's a lot of creative stuff coming out of the district area. And I feel that you know, with the democratization of funding as well, capital for small businesses specifically, when it comes to crowdsourcing and crowdfunding, micro loans, and alternative financing, that there's a lot of options there as well. But I think there are a lot of great partnerships in the capital region that can bring resources to bear because of the tight-knit group that the government, the private, the public, the nonprofit sector have with each other. That if somebody comes to me and we're helping them with their small business, but they also have, you know, a legal issue, that I can send them, I know, you know, call Daryl Maxwell, the DC Bar Pro Bono program, and you know, he'll be able to help you out.
Yeah.
And so we can pass and help these people, anybody with any problem they really come to us with.
Any other questions that anyone may have? concerning your finances or maybe a family member's, please.
I have a 14-year-old son who thinks money grows on trees, or daddy has a good job and there's always money around. Are there any programs or seminars, anything besides the things I do with them, where I could help them with that'll teach them saving, or something that we could do together as well?
Ray, please send them to us. Capital Area Asset Builders, all the classes, all the services we provide are for free. And we're in the business of facilitating access to information, access to tools, access to knowledge. One quick question. Does your son earn any income right now?
Other than household chores, he's only 14, so.
Okay. Summer jobs or any type of income that might be earned down the road. One great way to empower young people is to start getting them into the behavior of saving for a specific goal. One of the aspects that is unique about the tax code for anybody who earns income is setting up a Roth IRA. It's a great, powerful tool that we all need to have access to. We need to have access to taxable, tax-deferred, tax-exempt accounts. But what's great is that you would be empowering your son to take the step, take the action of knowing that down the road, he needs to be doing something. And right now, he can be taking the steps towards achieving that something.
But you know, if I could just add something, I just want to commend you, because it already seems like you're empowering your son, because you're already having this conversation with him. So that type of interaction is going to go a long way in terms of he will probably be taking care of you soon, because he's going to become a multimillionaire by the time he's 25.
Yeah, and I would just quickly add that the best way to learn something is to do it, and the fact of bringing up, you know, does he have a job, does he have an income? He is 14. The mayor has a summer youth program, started with Marion Barry, I believe, summer youth program. So you might want to look into that, and maybe you can get something out of that, and you can teach him that lesson.
And let me ask you this, have you ever shown your son your paycheck?
No.
Have you ever laid out the bills and show him where the paycheck goes?
In a sense, yes.
Okay.
Other than I pay for everything. He knows beyond dealing with like rent, car notes, cell phone bills. Fortunately, my credit card is paid off. I don't have to worry about that. Then because there's child support involved as well, so he understands that there's some money that's going to be saved for college as well. And the child support money is pretty much that's what it's going to go to. He doesn't, because he's a teenager, well, I want shoes, I want clothes, I want this, but there's more to life than a clean pair of Jordans or a new polo shirt or something.
Well, a simple framework that you might share with him is save some, give some, spend some. So whatever money he has.
Wait, say that again.
Save some, give some, spend some. I not said in the same order before, but essentially letting him know, you know, there are these three buckets, and whatever money he gets from gifts, from doing household chores, some of that money should be saved. Some of that money he should think about how he might want to help others and give some away, and then some of that's to spend. So at least getting him in that mindset, simple way.
Congratulations again, and thank you for your question. Where can people start to get their finances in order? Where do they begin starting now?
Well, I think it goes back to something that the entire panel has talked about, and that is really sitting down with your family members and saying, okay, what are the things that are absolute necessities to Joseph's point, and then let's talk about the things that are we'd like to have these, but they're not necessities, and really seeing where you can cut back on your expenses. You'd be surprised if you took a financial inventory of your household. You know what, I didn't realize I was spending this much money on this particular item. And that may be a source of savings that over time could help you to pay down the debt someplace else in your financial portfolio.
And let's start with some closing comments. What would you like for folks to take home from this conversation? Karen, let's start with you on this end.
I was going to say, start with a financial goal. A lot of times people find it very hard to cut money from their budget because they don't have any specific thing that they're working towards. But if you have a goal, you know, you want to save for a vacation, you want to save for an emergency fund, you want to, you know, you have a tangible goal, that's much more powerful. That gives you some motivation to begin making those changes within your budget. So I say, start with a goal.
Start with a goal. Joseph?
Absolutely. Goals, objectives, we all need them. Capital Area Asset Builders provides programs and services, so please visit us on the website, www.caab.org. We are here, we're a member of the community throughout the greater DC area, and we live in order to provide this type of services to anybody within the region.
Karen G.
I'd say talk about it, talk amongst your family, be honest with it, talk in the community, get help, And your goal, the first goal, is to have a financial freedom so that you can retire, so that you can travel,
I like that.
so
Financial
that you can
freedom.
definitely.
I like the way that sounds. Dr. Brown?
And to Karen's point, you have to believe that you are entitled and deserve to be financially free. But also, that source of social support is really key. And when you think about social support, I'm talking about perhaps a spouse, a partner, a friend that you trust, a person from the faith community, or a support group. I especially reach out to men because sometimes we tend not to want to ask for help because we feel that asking for help is an indictment of our manhood when in fact it is an exaltation of our humanity. So effective social support is a must-have as you're trying to navigate and get through the economically stressful times.
I like that. Jeremy, we'll close with you.
Yeah, I would go to something that we say in our office a lot, which our executive director, Tim Flanagan, repeats probably almost daily, is that we're all dealing with big issues here. In whatever we're dealing with, and these are big issues that people are having with financial stability and building wealth, and it's take it bite by bite. It's how you eat a dinosaur. That would take a long time to eat a dinosaur, but if you just take it bite by bite, start small, and focus on it, then I think you're going to get to where you want to go.
I loved all of this. Great. Say it one more time. Save some.
Save some, spend some, give some.
Get some. And financial freedom. I love it. I love it. Great conversation today. I'd like to thank our panel for being here, and of course, thank you to our audience. We hope that we've provided you with some valuable insight and information as you get on the path toward a financial makeover. To learn more about this program or others in our series, please go to our website at www.whut.org. I'm Tony Richards, and we'll see you next time on Vocal Point right here on WHUT TV.